People are frightened of discipline. People believe that discipline eliminates freedom, but the truth is that discipline builds your freedom. Think of a jazz pianist. If a jazz pianist doesn't practice their skills, then they can't improvise and express their soul. Freedom is built upon discipline. Freedom is not eradicated by discipline.
Welcome to the Superhuman Life. I'm your host, Frank Rich, and this is the only podcast in the world dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of addiction through the power of faith and fitness. It is our goal with every episode to help you take back control and rebuild your body, mind, and spirit. And we do so by bringing you real and raw conversations with people just like you, aiming to find their place in this world while dealing with the everyday struggles and battles that we all face. Now, it is my belief that we were all created for a specific purpose. And if we can harness that belief or faith, then take control of our mind and body or fitness, then we can ultimately create the life that we've always dreamed about, our own superhuman life. I want to let you know how grateful and blessed I am to have you here with me today. Let's get on to today's show. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing and very exciting episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, guys, I am your host, Frank Rich. And guys, I'm so excited about today's episode. This is a conversation that's had me intrigued throughout the entire talk. Just seeing some of the parallels between our guest this week, his work, and in the work that we've been really focused on here the last, about 2 years now, both with the show here, the Superhuman Life, and more recently, really what we've been dialing in and working on with my company, Rebuild Recovery, which you guys are very familiar with the work and what the mission is over there. It runs parallel with everything that we're having here at the Superhuman Life. So really excited to share this individual, to share his work, to share his expertise with you. But before I get into introducing our guest and letting you guys know what you can expect out of today's conversation, I want to make an exciting announcement. We have partnered with an organization, and we've brought on, I guess, a partner or sponsor for the show. We're going to run a couple tests here and see how well it performs. But we're excited to announce, guys, that we have a sponsor here for the show at the Superhuman Life. And this week's sponsor is Covenant Eyes. I'm a big fan of the work that they're doing at Covenant Eyes. They've been helping men or people in general fight pornography and overcome the battles that we all face for over 21 years now with their world-class accountability software and insightful educational resources. Covenant Eyes understands that people find freedom through supportive and authentic relationships. Now, they've been around long enough to know that porn affects everyone, men, women, children, everyone. If you're struggling with porn, we have a message for you. You are not alone, and we, both here at the Superhuman Life, at Rebuild Recovery, and Covenant Eyes, are here to help you. Now, what we've done is we put together a special offer for you, all of our listeners here at the Superhuman Life. So we'd like to offer you a free 30-day trial to the Covenant Eyes software by using promo code Superhuman. Guys, all you need to do is you need to visit Covenant Eyes at www.covenanteyes.com. That's COVENANT eyes, EYES.com, and enter promo code Superhuman at checkout. And you'll get your first free month trial. Now, where do I sit with accountability softwares? I run an organization. We have a coaching system, we have a coaching program, and we have other tools and resources for men. So people ask me, does this conflict with the work that you do at Rebuild Recovery? Absolutely not. The way that I see it is softwares, specifically Covenant Eyes, is like the supplement to your program. It's a supplement to your regimen. It's a supplement to whatever steps you're possibly taking to break free, because we know we need to change the neuroplasticity. We need to change the wiring and firing of our brain. So software is not going to do that, but a software can be an additional tool, additional resource in your reboot, in your recovery, in your freedom finding process to getting out of pornography and ultimately finding freedom in your own life. So check out covenanteyes.com, and I'm going to link it down there in the show notes. I'm going to link it down in the description box there below, but it's covenanteyes.com. Use code Superhuman at checkout to receive a free 1-month trial. So on to today's guest, guys. My guest today is none other than Dr. Glenn Livingston. Dr. Glenn Livingston is a Ph.D. and a veterinary psychologist and was the longtime CEO of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, which has serviced several Fortune 500 clients in the food industry. Glenn has sold over $30 million of marketing consulting services over the course of his career. You may have seen his work or his company's previous work, theories and research in major periodicals like the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Sun-Times, Indiana Star Ledger, New York Daily News, American Demographics, and many others. Uh, Delusioned by what traditional psychology had to offer overweight and or food obsessed individuals, Dr. Livingston spent several decades researching the nature of binging and overeating via his work and his own patients in a self-funded research program of more than 40,000 participants. Most important, however, his own personal journey out of obesity and food prison to a normal, healthy weight and a much more lighthearted relationship with food. So, guys, we're getting into food addiction. We're getting into overeating. We're getting into binge eating, understanding the psychology behind why do we chase binge eating? Why do we chase overeating? What role does our upbringing play in the foods that we seek out in these moments of binging and in these moments of overeating? We talk about the role that food industry and big food has played in the food engineering and how this is a drug in our brain. And much like we talk about with the dangers of pornography and how it hijacks some of the reward center, there's so many parallels in food and porn. Guys, this is an amazing conversation. Dr. Glenn is a true leader. I believe his book, Never Binge Again, is somewhere close to 1 million copies sold. So we definitely want to make sure we check out his book, Never Binge Again. We link all the resources, everything we touch on in the show notes down there below. But guys, without further ado, let's get into today's conversation with Dr. Glenn Livingston on overcoming food addiction and how to never binge again. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you on the other side. Dr. Livingston, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Thank you for having me here, Frank. I've been looking forward to it all week, and I'd prefer you call me Glenn if that's okay.
Absolutely, and you can call me Frank.
Okay.
So, Glenn, really excited about diving in here today. You know, like I was telling you just before I hit that big red button, you know, I think everybody in the world has, obviously, we all have a relationship with our food, and I think most of us, maybe that relationship is not always the best. You know, for me, I'll kind of give you a little bit of background the audience knows. So, I was a competitive bodybuilder for about 10 years, and that is really an industry where you see a lot of unhealthy relationships. You see these people that go on these crazy crash diets for 16 weeks, and it's like they keep this kind of guiding light kind of pulling them through a contest. It's like the minute I step off stage, I'm going to have a pizza waiting for me. And I've been there, and I've had to work through a lot of my own kind of issues, kind of reestablishing relationships. So I'm really excited about today's conversation.
It's
so
like
to have
feast and famine roller coaster. I work with bodybuilders.
Yeah, no. So this is going to be, there's going to be a lot that we're going to be able to get out. But to maybe kind of start here, Glenn, why don't we kind of go back in time a little bit? Because I know you had a unique upbringing, kind of the type of careers within your family. I'm kind of curious about how that kind of shaped your upbringing, kind of your life. But then also, how did your upbringing and your kind of family dynamic really play a role in your initial relationship with food? So yeah, kind of take us to the back. Who was Glenn kind of growing up, and kind of where was that foundation for your relationship with food?
Okay. Well, I'm the son of 2 psychotherapists in a family of 17 psychologists and therapists and social workers, and my mom and my dad and my stepmom and my stepdad and my sister and her husband and my cousins and my aunts and my uncles. And when something would break in the household, everybody knew how to ask it how it feels, and nobody knew how to fix it. So that was my. But I'm making fun of it, but it was a very soulful upbringing. And first and foremost, I always wanted to be a good psychologist. When I was 4, my mom called me into the living room and she said, "Glenn, there's your dad's on the radio." I goes, "Why is he on the radio?" And she says, "Well, he's a psychologist." I went, "What's that?" And she says, "Well, he makes people happy when they're sad." And I said, "Oh, I want to do that." And I said, "Why is he on the radio?" "Because he can make more people happy when they're sad." I said, "I want to do that." And so my whole life, that was my orientation. I had my friends come over when my dad was at work, and we go downstairs into his office, and I make them lie down on the couch and tell me about their mother. I actually bugged my dad's office when I was 9 years old so I could listen to his sessions. I got in some trouble for that. But that's what was important to me. That was my life, a very soulful, reflective life. And I was They didn't feed me so well. I think that my parents both had a food addiction. So, despite being a psychologist and health professionals, when I'd wake up in the morning, there would be a box of chocolate Pop Tarts on the table waiting for me, and I'd eat it all by myself, the whole box. When I'd come home from school, there'd be a big box of sugar pops. In the nighttime, we would have usually meat and potatoes, or meat and pasta, or pasta and bread. And I don't think I knew what a vegetable was until I was 16 or 17 years old. And I don't really know how I survived. When I think about what I ate as a kid, I don't know how I survived. But I spent a lot of time in a sugar coma. I spent a lot of time overeating in a sugar coma. When I was about 17, I figured out that because I'm modestly muscular, not so much anymore, but just physiologically, I'm modestly muscular, and I'm 6'4", if I worked out for a couple of hours a day, maybe you or your audience have had this experience also, that I could eat whatever I wanted to. Like 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day, um, bags of donuts, boxes of pizza, um, 6, 7 chocolate bars, whatever wasn't nailed down. And if you stopped at the Woodbury Country Deli and they were out of pizza or Pop Tarts, it's because I was there before you. And and I didn't think that was a problem, man. I thought that was a good thing. I thought that was like a superpower, to quote Doug Graham. Um, I felt like I had a special trick, and I could work out really hard, and I could spend a lot of time in the bathroom, and I could sleep a lot. And I was basically a big food processing machine. That's basically what I was in my youth. But I was thin, and girls liked me, and it was okay. And then when I was about 22, I got married, and I went to graduate school. And I was commuting 2 hours a day in each direction to take classes and see patients. And I was also helping my now ex-wife with her business at the time. And I didn't have a half hour to work out a week, much less 2 hours a day. And I was getting older, and my metabolism was slowing down. And the problem was, I found that the food had a life of its own. Like I would still be, sitting with suicidal patients and thinking about, when can I get to the deli and dislodge my jaw and empty the tray into my mouth, or when can I get another whole pizza? And that's when it started to bother me. I wasn't quite fat yet, but it started to bother me because it was interfering with my career. And if you know anything about psychology, it's not really an intellectual profession. I mean, it is. You got to know a lot of stuff, but it's more like you got to get people to love and trust you enough to fix their lives and think new thoughts and step out of their comfort zone. And when you're with suicidal people in particular, you have to be very, very tuned in. And I never lost anybody, but I wasn't 100% tuned in. I was just thinking about food all the time. And it bothered me a lot. And I started to go the psychological route. Being from the family that I was from, I went to see the best psychologist thinking I must have a hole in my heart. And if I could figure out the metaphorical hole in my heart, then I wouldn't keep trying to fill the hole in my stomach. And so I saw therapists and psychologists. I saw psychiatrists. I went to Overeaters Anonymous. And along the way, I was getting fatter, and then a little thinner, and then fatter and a little thinner. And my triglycerides had reached over 1,000 at one point, and the doctors were telling me I was going to die by the time I was, 35 if I didn't quit it. And I couldn't. I just couldn't. Um, and that paradigm didn't really work. I don't regret doing it because it was a very soulful journey, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about the relationship. I think the particular foods we choose are influenced by our upbringing and the particular needs that we had, and it's a lot of interesting things there. But it didn't help me to stop overeating. Well, simultaneously to this, my ex-wife, she was a focus group moderator, and she traveled a lot for business. So we never had kids, and I worked at home. I saw patients at home, and I started doing a second career doing corporate consulting from home. And I worked for big food companies and big pharma companies, but a lot of big food companies. And I was privy to what they were doing. And they were engineering these hyper palatable concentrations of starch and sugar and fat and oil and excitotoxins. And they're all designed to hit the bliss point in the lizard brain without giving us enough nutrition to feel satisfied. And that was my first clue that maybe my problem with food wasn't the fact that I had a hole in my heart and my mama didn't love me enough. Maybe there was this powerful outside force that was giving food a life of its own and causing it to take over. Then I started studying a little neurology, and I saw that the part of the brain that responds to food addiction, where you feel like you read a diet book all weekend long and you're gung ho on Monday morning, but by the time Monday afternoon comes, you're in front of a chocolate bar at Starbucks and you're thinking, well, chocolate really comes from a cocoa bean, so therefore it's a vegetable. Um, and you throw your best laid plans out the window. The reason for that is that that's your reptilian brain taking over. It's the most primitive part of our neuroanatomy, and I'm just going to represent it with my fist here. And when the lizard brain sees something in the environment, it evaluates it from a survival perspective. There's no love there. There's no art or spirituality or music or the kind of person you want to become. It's, do I eat it? Do I mate with it? Or do I kill it? Very like masculine and primitive stuff here. Eat, mate, or kill. It's the mammalian brain that's kind of evolved on top of that. Or it doesn't matter if it evolved or God put it there, by the way, because some people argue about that. But it's situated on top of that. And the mammalian brain says, wait a minute, before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what impact does this have on the people that you love in your tribe? And then the neocortex says, wait a minute, before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, not only what impact will it have on the people you love or your tribe, but what about the person you want to be in the world? What about the kind of person you want to be with food? What about your long-term plans? And so there's this like tripartite structure. And this part of the brain is where the feast and famine response is, which I've come to learn that the overeating or binge eating response is an error of the survival drive of the feast and famine response.
Yeah, and just for the people listening, because we do have there's an audio side of this as well. You're referencing the reptilian brain when you said this side. I just want to make sure that the audio.
I am talking to my fist. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And so the part of the brain that responds to food addiction, it's making a biological error. And that error is facilitated on purpose by big food and big advertising and even big addiction treatment. Um, and it's like this. Most people who struggle with overeating also struggle with dieting. They're usually very good dieters. There's this nursery rhyme that goes, when she was bad, she was very, very, when she was good, she was very, very good, but when she was bad, she was horrid. And most people, you were telling me a story about bodybuilding before, most people who struggle with binge eating, they're also very, very good dieters. And a bodybuilder can be a fantastic dieter for 16 weeks. And then all bets are off and, they dislodge their jaw also, and they've got a whole pizza waiting for them when they get off stage. I think those were your words. That's, if you think about it, a capitulation of the feast and famine response. And as we were evolving, it's likely that if we were in an environment for a period of time when there was famine, when there was a scarcity of nutrition and calories, which is what we put ourselves through, what we signal to our brain when we are fasting, when we are severely dieting or restricting, then the moment that food is available, there is a signal that says you better get all you can because the harvest is here and we don't know how long the famine is going to last. And so there's this wild swing that really activates the survival drive. And when the survival drive is overly active, it says it doesn't matter. And I'm referencing my neocortex now with the thing on the top. It doesn't matter what your long-term plans are. It doesn't matter about your family and your loved ones. It doesn't matter about your spirituality or your music or art. Give me some effing food. I need some effing food right effing now, right? Excuse my half language. So it makes the point, right? So I learned that the cause of binge eating doesn't really reside in the part of the brain that knows love. I learned that the industry was very powerful in engineering this stuff. I learned that the advertising industry was extremely powerful in influencing our belief that stuff was good for us. For example, I worked with the VP of a major food bar manufacturer, and just before he was leaving his position, he said, I have to confess something to you, Glenn. Our most profitable insight was to take the vitamins out of the bar. And we put the money into the packaging instead to make it look vibrant and colorful like a great big salad. And I said, so you're faking us out? He says, yep. And that kind of thing goes on all over the industry. And people think it doesn't affect them. And the problem is that advertising affects you more when you think it doesn't affect you because you lower your sales resistance. So we've got big addiction treatment, this very external outside force, very powerful force. I'm sorry, not big. We've got the big food industry saying, we're gonna really stimulate the bliss point in the lizard brain, but we're not going to give you the nutrition to feel satisfied. That overrides your best judgment, stimulates the lizard brain. We have the big advertising industry that makes us believe that the things we need to survive are in all these bags and boxes, containers, when in fact, whenever we're looking for love at the bottom of a bag or a box or a container, there's some fat cat in a white suit and a mustache that's laughing all the way to the bank, right? And then the addiction treatment industry says you can't quit even if you want to. The best you could do is abstain one day at a time. None of which is true, by the way. The research doesn't support that. So I had this idea, which was also fostered from some alternative addiction research I was doing, looking into how drugs and alcohol were treated. There was a man named Jack Trimpey, wrote a book called Rational Recovery, who really talked about dealing with the separation of the neocortex and the lizard brain. And I realized that I had the wrong paradigm. That this was 25 years later, but I said I've got the wrong paradigm. I can't love myself thin. I can't fill the hole in my heart. That's not working. Because when I'm in front of a chocolate bar at Starbucks and I'm saying I need to love myself more, it's like I'm just letting go of my neocortex and my cortical control, and I'm just letting the lizard brain run rampant. I'm pumping my fist up and down. And so I decided there had to be another paradigm, which would be more like an alpha wolf dealing with challengers for leadership in the pack. And when an alpha wolf deals with challenges for leadership in the pack, it doesn't, when there's a challenger, it doesn't say to the challenger, "Oh my goodness, someone needs a hug. Come here, let me kiss you." It says, "Get back in line or I'll kill you." And it snarls and it growls and it faces it down. And if the challenger keeps going, there's going to be a fight, right? There could be a fight to the death. So I said, well, you think about other bodily impulses. It's kind of odd that we're saying we should love ourselves more when the bodily impulse arises, because we don't talk about that at all for our other impulses. If I really had to pee now, if I really, really had to pee, I would tell my bladder, I get it. I'll take care of you later, but I'm in charge. I'm talking to Frank. Seems like a cool guy. I want to finish this conversation. I'll pee later, right? I would take charge. I would suppress the urge, and I would take care of the bodily urge in the appropriate way in the appropriate time later. If I'm walking down the street and there's a gorgeous woman walking a couple of feet next to me, I don't walk up to her and kiss her. Stranger that I don't know. I don't do that. I might want to, but I'm shy. No, I might want to, but no matter how much, I could get in a lot of trouble if I was doing that. So I suppress that urge and I act like a civilized human being. And I started to say, well, why can't I do the same thing with food? Now, at this time, I was not going to publish anything about it. I was running a coach training organization. I was doing some corporate consulting. I had other projects on my list, and I still felt like I was, substantially overweight and needed to fix some stuff myself before I could help anybody. So I did a little experiment internally that I was never going to talk about publicly, and I can't believe that now this is what I'm famous for. I decided that I was going to draw a very clear, bright line between healthy and unhealthy eating. So, for example, I will never have chocolate on a weekday again. I'll have it on Saturdays and Sunday only. All of my binges tended to start with chocolate. I will never have chocolate on a weekday again. That way, if I heard a little voice in my head saying, I know it's Wednesday, but you worked out hard enough, Glenn. You can eat some chocolate. You're not going to gain any weight. We can start again tomorrow. It'll be just as easy. I would say, whoa, that's not me. This is the part that's embarrassing for a sophisticated psychologist. I'd say, that's not me. That's my inner pig. And my inner pig is squealing for pig slop. Chocolate is pig slop on a Wednesday. I don't eat pig slop, and I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. This was the opposite of being compassionate and sensitive to myself. It was a very alpha wolf approach. And as ridiculous as that sounds, as crude as that sounds, and as private as I always wanted that to be, that's what gave me the extra microseconds at the moment of impulse to begin to make the right decision.
Well,
I
it
don't
also seems like it gave you the ability to separate it from yourself. So it's like you took, a part of it is a part of Glenn, this inner pig, but you've separated it. You've given it another caricature, and you're like, now I have something that I can resist. I can resist because I can see the pig is speaking to me. So it's not like I'm talking to myself. It's like this other thing, this other caricature that's not me. No, I'm not ready for you today. Return back on Saturday.
Exactly.
So I 100% get it.
Exactly. And so suddenly my destructive food thoughts were very separate and distinct from my constructive food thoughts. Anything that suggested that I would cross the line became a destructive thought. And I could wake up and think about whether I wanted to make a different decision. I'd like to tell you it was a miracle and I never made the wrong decision again. That's not what happened. What did happen was that I stopped feeling confused and hopeless and powerless. I stopped feeling despairing, and sometimes I made the right decision. And then I started messing around with the rules because I figured there's no point in rebelling against rules that I'm making for myself. So let me make rules that I'll actually follow. And what became critical for me was not losing weight, but proving that I was control. I up until that point, I realized that I'd been my pig's. Can I say bitch? I mean,
Yeah, of course.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
know. Okay, I've been my pig bitch. I'd been my pig's bitch up until that point, and I said, "Screw that! I'm done with that. My pig is my bitch. I'm not my pig's bitch. It's going to be the bitch." And I really am a compassionate, sensitive person, believe it or not. But I'm not going to be the bitch. I'm not going to let it break my spirit anymore. What's most important is that I have a set of rules that I can and will follow. Forget about weight loss. If I can and will follow the rules, sooner or later I'll adjust the rules so I lose weight. And that's what I did, and my confidence skyrocketed. Over the course of about a year, I started to follow the rules like 95% of the time, and my weight started to come down, and I got rid of rosacea and sciatica, and not sciatica, so psoriasis and
Mm.
eczema and things like that, because I actually kind of eliminated animal protein and whey, and it made my immune response better. And my blood numbers came down, and all the miracles you hear about in weight loss stories. Um, and then I discovered a few more things along the way that made it better. I discovered that there were two things that were at work that were making it easier for me at the moment of impulse. The first was I was ripping apart my neocortex from the erroneous lizard brain impulse. That was the first thing. The second part was that if I would carry a pen and paper around with me and write down what the pig said, I was further moving from lizard brain to neocortex. Right? Writing is a cortical function, and binging is a lizard brain function.
Mm.
Like you have to be thinking. If a tiger was chasing you and you had strong survival needs at the moment, you couldn't take the time to write. So just the fact that you're writing it down, right? The second thing was when I would write down the whole squeal, I could use my logical brain to prove that it was wrong. So when the pig would say, "It's just as easy to
Mm.
start tomorrow. Go ahead and binge today and some chocolate." Well, I knew that the facts proved otherwise because the principles of neuroplasticity say that if you crave chocolate today and you eat chocolate today, then
Bigger
that
thing.
connection will be stronger. So you're going to be digging a deeper hole for yourself. If you're in the hole, you should stop digging, right? I also knew that if you reward the thought, "I'll start tomorrow," with a dopamine hit, and most sugar and starch and food pleasure creates a dopamine hit in the brain. If you reward the thought, "I'll start tomorrow," with a dopamine hit, you'll be more likely to have the thought, "I'll start tomorrow tomorrow." So you're digging a groove that's going to bring you further down and further down and further down and further down. So I would start to write down exactly what the pig was saying and disempower it. And I just kept a journal for about 8 years. I was not going to publish this at all.
Mm.
And I got thin relatively. I mean, I could lose 7 pounds, 8 pounds. Um, I fluctuated a 10-pound range, but I got thin. And as I was getting divorced in 2015, I was a minor part of a publishing company because I've always had business dealings. And the CEO called me and said, "Glenn, we have to write a book. We're not attracting good enough authors. They won't let us do the marketing we need to do for them. We have to write a book and market it ourselves so that we can prove that we're good and attract better authors." I said, "Okay, well, I have this crazy journal of me versus the pig that I've kept for 8 years. Why don't I turn that into a book?" He says, "Dude, I love it." So I turned it into a book. I took the summer and turned it into a book. I sent it to him. And he calls me back 2 weeks later and he says, "I don't need donuts. Donuts are pig slop. I don't let farm animals tell me what to do." And he proceeds to lose almost 100 pounds over the course of about 18 months. So we published the book somewhere in there. I forget exactly when. And it was a slow start, but then it just took off. And now we have over 1 million readers, and we have, you know, 6 coaches, and we have coaching programs and rehab programs. We I walk around and people don't really recognize my name if they see me in a bookstore, but they point at me and they go, "Pig guy, pig guy," so, which is a really good thing on a first date. I got to tell you, that's what you want to have.
Yeah.
So that's my backstory. That's how I
Yeah.
got here.
No, that's amazing. I mean, just the fact that, I mean, a million readers. I mean, that in of itself is world changing. There's so much I want to, there's so much I want to unpack here with you. Being somebody that works, in the addiction, I'm air quoting here because you want to go clinically. Yeah, porn addiction isn't the same thing. So hijacks the reward center in the same way that it does here. A couple things that I wanted to that really kind of jumped out. Um, you talked about foods in our upbringing, how our upbringing can maybe shape the foods that we binge on. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
So I did this 40,000 person study before I discovered the structure of the brain and before I changed paradigms when I was trying to nurture myself, nurture my inner wounded child to get better, when I was trying to love myself then. And in that study, I intercept people who were feeling stressed and searching for some stress solution. And I asked them, what do they feel stressed about? And what foods can't they stop eating? And I discovered that people who were feeling lonely or depressed or brokenhearted, they tended to binge on chocolate. People who were feeling stressed at work tended to binge on salty, crunchy things like chips and pretzels and things like that. And people who were feeling stressed at home tended to binge on soft, chewy things. So I called my mom, since I was a chocolate binger. I mean, I ate other things, but that's always what started my binges. I called my mom, who, as you recall, was a therapist, and I said, "Mom, I'm in a bad marriage. I am kind of brokenhearted and lonely and a little depressed. Um, but I need to understand this better. Why do lonely, depressed people go to chocolate?" And she gets this horrible look on her face. She says, "I'm so sorry, honey." And I said, "Mom, it's okay. It's 40 years ago. Whatever it is, I forgive you. I love you. I'm just trying to figure this out." And she said, "Well, when you were 1 year old, your father was a captain in the army, and they were talking about sending him to Vietnam. We lived in Washington, D.C. And I was terrified because, I had a little boy, and we were trying to get pregnant with your sister. And I thought I'm going to be an army widow with two small kids. And, I loved your dad. And I did not want to go through that. So I was terrified. At the same time, my father, your grandfather, had just gotten out of prison. And I had always idolized the guy. He was my one salvation in life. And I didn't know that he was guilty, and he was. And my world fell apart. I was depressed. So half the time when you came to me as a 1 year old for love and cuddles and fun and healthy food, I didn't have the wherewithal to give it to you. So what I did was I put a big bottle of chocolate Bosco syrup in a refrigerator on the floor. And I say, "Glenn, go get your Bosco." And you would go crawling over to the refrigerator and you'd open it up and you'd open up the bottle and you'd suck on it and you'd go into a chocolate sugar coma. And I could resume staring at the wall. "I'm really, really sorry. I love you, honey, but that's what I did." What happened to me after that, see, if this was a movie, if that type of insight would really resolve a conflict, you would expect that I'd hug my mom, we'd have a big cry, we'd forgive each other, and then I would never have trouble with chocolate again. It was a good conversation to have with mom. I certainly forgave her. I forgave myself. I was softer on myself after that. I didn't hate myself as much, even though I was binging. But my binging got worse, particularly my chocolate binging, because at that point there was this little voice in my head that said, "You know what, Glenn? You're right. Our mama didn't love us enough. And until we can find the love of our life and get out of this lousy marriage, you're going to have to keep binging on chocolate. Let's go get some right now. There's a big chocolate sized hole in your heart." And it was at that point that my paradigm really started to switch. And I said, okay, first of all, most of the addiction treatment world suggests that the problem is the craving itself or the emotion itself. And I said, well, what if you think about the craving like a fire? You could have a roaring fire in a well contained fireplace, and that becomes an asset, not a liability. That becomes the center of hearth and home. People gather round, they cry and they hug and they laugh and they tell stories, create memories. It's only when there are holes in the fireplace that the fire can get out and burn things down. And so I realized it was this crazy voice of justification, my pig, quote unquote, if you will, that was creating the holes in the fireplace. The other thing I subsequently learned, which was really interesting, because everybody says, well, I'm just numbing out. I'm just numbing out. That's why I'm eating chocolate. That's why I'm overeating. Life is too hard. I'm escaping. It's true that when you overload your digestive system, it's a little warm here, that's why I'm sweating. When you overload your digestive system, the nervous system has trouble conducting the emotions. Um, but it's also true that the things that we are eating are not things that existed on the savannah. We did not have, you know, Doritos and pasta and pizza and Pop Tarts on the savannah. These are artificial concentrations of calories and excitotoxins and food pleasure that are akin to, a supersized stimulus or otherwise a drug. Right? It's not. It's legal, but these things don't exist. And what happens, by the way, when you overstimulate the pleasure system is that, and this happens with pornography also, by the way. Um, when you overstimulate the pleasure system in a way that is not available in nature, your brain down regulates its pleasure response. I want to hear the analogy for porn if you could. Your brain down regulates the pleasure response so that in the case of food, you no longer can taste and get pleasure from the natural flavors and distinctions in fruit and vegetables. Everybody knows if you want to lose weight, you're going to have more fruit or vegetables, or at least vegetables. But everybody says it's hopeless because I don't like it anymore. That's because you downregulated the system. The good news is if you get some of that overstimulation out, your body will upregulate and you'll start to experience pleasure from normal stimulation again. I forgot what led us to that discussion, but
foods in upbringing and kind of how all that kind of plays a role.
Right. So we're eating drugs, and we're eating them not only to comfort ourselves, we're eating them to get high with food. When you have a chocolate bar, you are getting high with food. I would fight for your right to do that if you want to. I'm in favor of individual liberty. I think we fought wars in this country for our freedom. I would fight for your right to do that if you want to, but you should know what you're doing.
You understand what is taking place here. Understand, you talked about big food, and big advertising. Like, these are for profit. These are capitalists. Their primary objective, number one, is not to make sure that you're healthy and full. It's to make profits, to make revenues. And you share that story about removing the vitamins. Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, I'm sure you're just seeing me nodding as everything you're saying. It's like, yep, addiction, yep, hijacked reward center, yep. You're seeking pornography, not because you're lonely. You're not seeking intimacy. Maybe it started there at the beginning, but for me, I have to break it down and understand that these guys, just like you said, when you have all this sugar, it down regulates your normal dopamine receptor. Same thing with pornography. First, second, exposure to this super normal stimulus. I think you use that terminology as well. We've had a couple neuroscientists on the podcast kind of breaking down, what porn is doing. So you get that first, second exposure. You've now created this new normal for that stimulus, and this is where it gets really dangerous. And I'm curious how maybe the food addiction is similar, because with something like pornography, so to get the same hit that you got from the first scene, you have to go into deeper, kind of more hardcore, more graphic genres, and that can lead you kind of down a dark path. I've talked about human trafficking. We've interviewed a few experts, and I'm involved in a couple.
No, and people are looking at bondage and multiple people together.
It's very so where does that take you? I mean,
the analogy is the same. You need higher and higher concentrations of food, more calories, more stimulation. Just look at the evolution of the number of calories per serving, the amount of sugar that people are eating. It's happening to the whole population. And look at the evolution of diabetes and obesity and heart disease and even diet reversible forms of cancer or diet preventable forms of cancer. We are downregulated. We live in a world where we think the stimulation is normal. I want to say a couple more things about emotion and food. So everybody understands that there is this anesthetic relationship. They don't understand that we're eating to get high with food. We're not just eating to numb out. You can remember that by saying, when you go to the dentist, if they're out of Novocaine, does he ever say, "I'm sorry, I'm out of Novocaine. I'm just going to inject you with a bagel instead. Or I'm going to inject you with a little bit of chocolate." They don't say that, right? Because numbing out is a different function. But there's another part of this. Let's take an emotion you might want to escape from, like anxiety. A lot of people tell me they have to overeat at night or they can't sleep because they're too anxious. Well, anxiety has a very distinct physiological profile. Your respiration goes up, your galvanic skin response goes up, your heartbeat goes up, your perspiration might go up. And we can measure this in animals. And we found that if we wait for animals to demonstrate signs of anxiety and then we give them a sugar reward, those animals' bodies learn to produce more anxiety. So by the principle of operant conditioning, which is rewarding certain physiological states or behaviors, the relationship can also go the other way also. So if you're anxious and then you have a chocolate bar, or you're anxious and you have to have a big plate of pasta and you get that dopamine hit, you've trained your body to produce more anxiety. So you're actually creating the anxiety. You think you get a temporary reduction. This happens with cigarettes also. People think that cigarettes make them calmer. No, it raises your stress level overall, and you get back down to normal for a little bit when you have a cigarette. That's what's happening with food and anxiety also. So it's a two-way relationship between food and emotions. And so what I tell people to do, what I'm trying to teach people to do, is to sever the link between food and emotion. It's fine to go investigate your relationship with your emotions and food. It's fine to learn how to cope with anxiety and where did it come from, and were you afraid of being abandoned? Did your daddy hit you? Did you peek at your sister in the bathtub? What's making you anxious? That's a very good, valuable therapeutic thing to do, but it's not going to cure your food addiction. You want to use very practical techniques to sever the link. And so if you have a very clear rule, I never eat after 8 o'clock at night, or dinner and done, and that's it. If you have a very clear line, then the emotions don't matter. You might have emotions, you might be uncomfortable, but you have to follow these very practical lines so that you can then experience emotions and deal with them in therapy or whatever. But you stop that two-way relationship. You stop rewarding the emotions with food. So that's actually very important. And that took me. I was 50 years old before I figured that out. I spent a lifetime thinking that I was eating for emotional reasons. And I had to stop thinking like that to really get better at
Yeah,
45.
this has been, I mean, just in the first, 30 minutes, this has been eye opening for me, because I even catch myself sometimes still today, like, oh, I'm eating, I'm lonely. I'm a single guy, recovering porn addict, like get pretty isolated life at this point. And I'll catch myself on Saturday, I'm just eating that because I'm lonely. But this is really challenging me here to kind of look at my own self. I want to define some terminology if we can. So we've used binge. I know that's, your book is Never Binge Again. We talked about food addiction. How, can we define what is a binge, and how can we maybe separate, like, if somebody has a food addiction, so they can know, other than they're just lacking discipline and they're just an asshole and they eat like an idiot sometimes. Like, is there a way that we can kind of define the two?
Well, you can look up the DSM-5 definition of binge eating. I write fairly regularly for Psychology Today, and I just read an article about this. I'm disturbed about the current definition of binge eating disorders and other eating disorders, because the obesity rate in America, I think it's 42%. Like the rate at which people are experiencing negative physical, clinical symptoms, higher risks of heart disease and cancer and diabetes, it's about 40%. But the incidence of binge eating is 2.8%. And so I cringe a little bit when people ask me this question. I know it's a very innocent question, but I cringe a little bit because I don't want people to go look at the DSM-5, which says, a certain number of times per week or per month that you are overeating and feel disgusted with your.
I'm not a fan of the book. There's DSM-5 doesn't recognize porn addiction, and nobody in their right mind is going to be able to tell me that there is not a thing known as porn addiction. I'm not a fan of the DSM-5, but whatever.
Right. So my fear is that people are going to look at that and say, well, I don't fall into that 2.8% of the population, and therefore I don't need help. Um, the the methodology that I've been talking about here will help you, whether you once in a while eat beyond your own best judgment or you're, binging 5 times a day. And regardless of whether you're once in a while eating beyond your own best judgment or binging 5 times a day, you will feel stronger and more confident and better knowing that you have the ability to make intellectual decisions about what goes in your mouth, that you have more control. Your pig will be your bitch. You don't have to be the pig's bitch. That's what this does. So that's where you'll find the clinical definition of it. I think, if people feel like they'd like to have better digestion, if they feel like they would like to lose a few pounds, if they would like to have more energy and sleep better, there's so many benefits to, controlling the volume and things that go in your mouth, then why not? Why not do it? So that's
Yeah.
my answer to that question.
No, that's great. No, I mean, I wasn't asking to, to spout out like, Webster's definition or whatever. Like I wanted your professional, your opinion or however you define it in the work that you do. So I appreciate you, kind of framing
In,
that in
in
the way
my
that you
book,
did.
in my book, I say something radical. I say a binge is one bite off of your food plan. And the reason I say that is that I want people to aim for a very well defined bullseye. And if you have a fuzzy center and you don't know where it starts and ends, then if you miss the center, you don't know by how much and in what direction. And so you don't know what adjustments to make. And there's a whole movement out there that says, well, you should just kind of try to eat well most of the time and don't drive yourself crazy about this. But you're missing that feedback if you do. I tell people that the energy of perfectionism is useful if you use it in the right way and harmful if you use it in the wrong way. When an archer is aiming for the bullseye, they aim with perfection. They don't let go, an Olympic archer will not let go of the arrow, we call it loosing the arrow, until they feel one with the target. They have to feel, they're not saying maybe I'll hit it, maybe I won't, I'll do the best I can. No, they see the arrow going into the target and then they release. An Olympic archer only hits the bullseye about 34% of the time, but they commit with perfection and then they analyze the shot, they make adjustments, and they forgive themselves with dignity for having missed. So I say commit with perfection and forgive yourself with dignity. That way you can draw a very clear target and benefit from the ability to aim for it and from the corrections you make when you miss it. You can also benefit, and this is key, because you're not saying maybe I'll make it and maybe I won't, which when it comes to food pleasure just means I probably won't make it for too long. I'm just going to do it until I don't feel like it anymore. You can purge your mind of doubt and distraction and use all that energy to focus on the goal. So you're more likely to accomplish the goal. So that's why I say commit with perfection, forgive yourself with dignity. And people are afraid to define the bullseye so precisely and think of one bite off as a binge because they think that then their pig is going to say, oh, you missed, you're off target, you might as well eat whatever you want for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
That's the same as
it's where self-destruction is going to come into play. So I was going to ask you, because I love the archery analogy, but I would say, it's a peak performer, and people performing at that level, especially if they're in the Olympics or, high achieving business people or high achievers in any realm, understand the process of failing. Failing is not failing until you finally give up. Like it's success is just a series of failures stacked on top of one another. But a person that's struggling with binge eating or eating addiction, food addiction, they may not be the highest level peak performer. So they're going to have this aim of perfection, and the first or second time that they're off track, then the kind of self doubt and kind of self defeating thoughts and even some of the self inflicted words and kind of how we talk inside of our own heads kind of come to play. So as a psychologist, like how do you coach your clients or how do you walk people through like understanding like, hey, when you miss a target, like that's not the time where you just start beating yourself up and you're an idiot, you're going to fail again, you might as well just be fat for the rest of your life.
there are a whole bunch of things. How do you teach people to forgive themselves with dignity? Um, if you accidentally touch a hot stove, do you then say, just forget it, I'm a pathetic hot stove toucher, I should put my whole hand down on the stove and just burn it? You don't do that, right? You figure out, why did I touch the hot stove and how do I miss it? I tell people that self-derogatory voice after you make a mistake is actually the lizard brain trying to get you to make another one. It wants you to feel too weak to resist the next binge. And so all of that self-hatred and self-disgust is intended to wear you down and make you feel incapable of resisting. That's a piercing insight. Once people realize that's what's going on, they get mad and they say, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. Then I tell them that there are two lenses by which we can look at any situation. We look at it through the lens of success or the lens of failure. If you say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stop eating? You're directing your brain to collect evidence of failure and figure out why you can't stop eating. If you collect all that evidence, you will convince yourself that you can't stop eating. If instead you say, what did I do right? What was better this time? how can I stop eating? How can I do better next time? You'll say, maybe I had 5 cupcakes instead of 15. 5 cupcakes is better than 15. Maybe I had a 5,000 calorie binge instead of a 20,000 calorie binge. That's better. Maybe I stopped after an hour. Maybe I got myself to have a salad when I was done. How can I collect evidence of success and build up my strength? People will start to notice that if they refuse to yell at themselves after a binge, it's really hard to keep binging and the binges become less serious. And that becomes the evidence that they need to start to follow this a little more thoroughly. There's one more thing, Frank. Um, what's the alternative to aiming at that perfect bullseye? The alternative is to play blind archery or fuzzy up the target, or to kind of sort of aim in the right direction. And here's the problem with kind of sort of aiming in the right direction. Let's say you follow the traditional advice that says, I'm just going to eat well 90% of the time and indulge myself 10% of the time. The problem with that is every time you're in front of a chocolate bar, you have to make another chocolate decision. Is this part of the 10% or this part of the 90%? The problem with that is that willpower is the ability to make good decisions, and we only have so much of it. The research shows that it's a fatigable muscle. And so if you want to eat chocolate 10% of the time, be my guest, but define what that is. Maybe you can have it at one meal on Saturdays. That would be 5% of the time, I guess. Maybe you could have it the last 3 days of the calendar month. That way, you've got a hard and fast rule, a very clear line. You can hear the pig squealing. You can hear that destructive set of voices in your head and that are making rationalizations and learn to dispute them and disempower them. And your chocolate decisions are made for the month. You don't have to use willpower to get through. So I'm in favor of hard and fast rules only for your dangerous food problems. I'm also in favor of as much freedom as possible, like not making more rules than you need. But for your difficult decisions, try to make them beforehand and articulate the kind of person you're trying to become.
Got it. So would you say you're a fan of, like food, meal preps, or, like having like a consistent, this is one thing I think that obviously helps, bodybuilders, for 16 weeks, like, coach hands you a diet, like just go eat it. Like you can't mess it up. So, with your clients and kind of like with everyday people, do you say, pick your breakfast, pick your lunch, and this is what you're going to eat every day, and maybe have some variables in there, but kind of a really set meal plan? So outside of your rules of things that you don't eat and the last 3 days of all this, are you a fan of like a specific meal plan and timing and all that?
For some people. For some people.
Okay. So
Never
individualized.
Binge again is diet agnostic, and there's a whole bunch of different reasons for that. If I give you a diet, your pig will eventually say, that doctor's diet is no good. We're going to have to find another one. Until we find another one, we might as well just keep binging. It's a disowning and disclaiming of authority and responsibility. I find that dependence is a big factor in addiction. You can't make yourself dependent on another person. You have to own your rules yourself. Otherwise, it's too easy for your pig to rebel against them. So we work with people in all different dietary philosophies. I work with keto people. I work with plant-based people. I'm a plant-based person. I work with macrobiotic, vegans, carnivores, whatever it is. My goal is to get you to stop binging on a reasonable plan. If it's too restrictive, when people are coming to me with these 800 calorie diets or 500 calorie diets, I say we can try, but it's probably not going to work, because at some point your body says, we're starving, you got to eat something, right? And then you can't refute that. It's really hard to refute it. So what you want to do if you want to lose weight is flood your body with nutrition at a slight caloric deficit. Lose like maybe 1 or 2 pounds a week. I'm happier with one. I have much more success when people lose weight slowly. So I don't tell people what to eat. I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist. With regards to food prep, I'm in favor of people having as much freedom as possible, but no more. And some people do much better if they've prepped their food for a month and they know exactly what they're going to have and they make no decisions. There are services that will do that for you. Sometimes that's how people have to start. Most people that I work with start with one simple rule. Like this truck driver that said, I eat 3 meals from fast food restaurants every day, but I'll tell you what, I won't go back for seconds. And he started off that way and he started losing weight. He got inspired. He made some other rules, lost 150 pounds. So most people start with one simple rule and just prove that they're in charge, and they restore hope and enthusiasm and eliminate despair. And then they develop their own rules from there.
Yeah, because they start getting little victories, and then they start developing some confidence. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And then they look at, okay, what can I add? What can I add? How can I add? Make new rules, tweak things. I really, really love that. I wanted to get your take on, the broken addiction model. You kind of touched on that here. Kind of sharing your story that you saw that the addiction model was broken. I've shared my take on your classic 12 steps and whatnot. I think that there's good behind it, and I think that in a way it keeps people too attached to the identity of the addict. So I'm just curious, kind of your thoughts and take on
Those are
the
my thoughts. There are, I mean, there are a lot of classic spiritual pursuits in those programs. There's character work and there's socialization and responsibility and things like that, and people get benefit from it. The research doesn't show that they're effective. They're at parity or worse than doing nothing at all. So you're giving up an awful lot. You give up your autonomy. You have to work with a sponsor. They tell you you have to go to meetings, and they cultivate a fear of the impulse. There's nothing wrong with the impulse to look at a naked woman. The problem is, how is that going to impact your life and the person that you want to be? Are you going to be able to have the relationship that you want? Are you going to waste your energy? Are you going to risk your marriage? Are you going to do things that are going to get you in trouble? But it's not the urge that's broken. That's it. That's a healthy part of our anatomy. You wouldn't want to castrate yourself in order to stop watching porn. You wouldn't want to eliminate your taste buds, take out your tongue, so that you don't experience food cravings. You want to learn to live comfortably with those cravings, and as a matter of character, which is nothing more than the habitual way you respond to temptation, as a matter of character, decide the kind of person that you are and you want to be with those temptations, and live the life that you want to live. And so the difference between Never Binge Again, or Rational Recovery, by the way, and the 12-step programs is that the 12-step programs cultivate a fear of your own impulses in your own body, whereas we cultivate a confidence and security and strength. You could throw me in a bathtub full of melted chocolate and I wouldn't have a bite. I wouldn't do that unless I was proving something, because I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to stimulate those cravings if I can help it. But I'm not frightened of them. I think cravings are inevitable. Overeating is not. Lust is inevitable, but the action is not. Using porn is not. So
Yeah, no, love that. And I mean, I'm right in line. You could drop me off at a strip club, or put me in a room of naked women. I've worked through all that because I changed who I was, and I love the fact that you're like, no, it's confidence, power. Like, I want to hand you a process. I want to hand you the system and tools, but you have everything inside of you to work through this. You're not powerless to
you're
something
not powerless.
beyond you.
I think the concept of powerlessness is the cardinal sin in addiction. I think it can make things worse, but
Yeah,
believing that you're powerless over the impulse.
this has been amazing. This is really, really good. I mean,
This saved my life. The reason I'm so passionate about it, this saved my life. I did not have a life before all this. I was 80 pounds heavier. I was thinking about food night and day. I was miserable. I was suicidal for a while. Not that I ever did anything about it. This saved my life. That's why I'm so passionate about it.
likewise, yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. So, Glenn, I appreciate you so much. Is there anything I missed? I mean, we're coming up on on the time here. I just
What I would say is that people are frightened of discipline. People believe that discipline eliminates freedom, but the truth is that discipline builds your freedom. Think of an automobile. If it wasn't for the discipline of the engineers that make the wheels turn 30 degrees in the right when you turn the steering wheel 30 degrees to the right, you couldn't drive and your radius of locomotion would be much smaller. You couldn't get around town or across the country. Think of a jazz pianist. If a jazz pianist, which I wanted to be one when I was a kid, if a jazz pianist doesn't practice their scales, then they can't improvise and express their soul. Freedom is built upon discipline. Freedom is not eradicated by discipline. So choose a discipline, however small, build it into your life and watch what happens.
yeah, that's Jocko Willink, the classic Navy SEAL author, extreme ownership. Like his line is structure equals freedom. Build so much structure, so much routine into your day, into your life, that you just have this sense of freedom because you're doing everything that you designed for your life. And that's what I see as freedom. So this has been amazing. I've one final question here, Glenn, at the end that we ask every single guest. But before we do that, I want to give you an opportunity to, share with the audience kind of, where you're hanging out socially, where can they find you? Knowing that binging is one bite over your meal plan, I think we're going to have a lot of people that may be interested in maybe learning more about your work, maybe picking up the book, or just kind of seeing, what you're doing with the coaching. So yeah, where can people connect with you? Where's the best place to find you?
I will tell you, could I ask you one question after that?
Please.
Okay. So the best place to get everything is at neverbingeagain.com. Click the big red button and sign up for the reader bonuses. You'll get a free copy of the book in Kindle, Nook, or PDF format. You'll get a set of recorded full-length coaching sessions, so you can see this is a compassionate, effective process in reality, even though you must be thinking, why does Frank have on this weird doctor with a pig inside of him? And you'll get a set of food plan starter templates, which is a set of rules you can modify for any particular diet. We have one for keto, we have one for vegans, we have one for point counters, calorie counters. Whatever way you're trying to eat, you can get a start there. The question I wanted to ask, it's neverbingeagain.com, neverbingeagain.com, click the big red button. What I wanted to ask you, Frank, was what are the parallels that you see to porn recovery, and where do you see the difficulties or divergences? I'd just be really curious.
Yeah, so parallel to what you said. I mean, so I'll just kind of share with you, kind of the process, in 3 minutes if I can get it. I think the first thing is actually identifying and admitting that there's a problem. Socially, kind of in the world right now, porn is okay. It's something that boys need. It kind of, evolves and kind of shapes your sexual desire, and it's something every guy's doing. So you got to break that belief system first, shatter that paradigm. So identifying and recognizing that there's a problem and saying I need to work through this. From there, I have my guys kind of do an audit of their life. Like, where has porn impacted you? It's not just a negative thing because you waste too much time. This has infiltrated another area of your life, whether it's relationship, whether it's your desire and joy for life. Like, a lot of guys struggle with really drive and motivation because we understand how it kind of hijacks, that reward center of your brain. So admit there's a problem, identify it's where it impacted, and then let's develop kind of the North Star. So what are we going to work towards? So if we know this is the man that we are and this is where porn has put us, then we have to change our identity. We have to become the new person. So what I like to say is, in order to overcome your addiction to pornography, you must become the man that's no longer addicted to porn. And I think that word become is rooted in an identity change. So really the work that I say that I do is I'm an identity coach. I help people get out of their own way, create a new plan for their life, and then build a system and process to help you get there.
I love that.
So I don't know how similar that is to the process.
Well, that's what I do also. I ask them, what kind of person do you want to become with
Yep.
what role do you want chocolate to play in life? What kind of person do you want to be? And it's more than a bunch of Nazi food rules that you have to follow or be punished. It's the kind of person you're trying to become.
Yeah, and understanding, like you said, that this lust is it's literally, it's a driver of our human nature. It's planted there or evolved over time, whichever one. I'm a believer, so I do believe that I do believe in God, and whether or not God used evolution to get us here, that's a whole different argument. I'd love to spend hours talking about that with people. That really fascinates me. But besides the point, the lust is a part of what makes us human. So those triggers, those desires, they're not going to go away. You're going to see the beautiful woman, and she's going to trigger you, but she was created beautifully for a purpose, and that's why our brain responds to that. So understanding that is the first thing. Like, you're never going to lose that desire of wanting to look at it, but being able to manage it.
She was created beautifully so that you would be more interested in mating with her than watching the sunset.
Exactly.
So our species could keep going.
100%. So yes.
So do you have people come up with a personal definition of what porn is and what porn isn't? So how do you know, like, if you're watching TV or you're watching a movie, how do you know when you're using porn?
Yeah, I guess we would define internet streaming pornography. So what you're getting on a tube site, because I don't think watching a movie, with an intimate sex scene is giving you that super normal response. Yeah, it may be a little bit higher than normal, but where the danger falls in is where I can click a URL into a website right now, and I have 165 years of pornography at my fingertips. So it creates this overabundance. With a scene, like if you're watching a movie, it's done and gone in 20 seconds. You don't sit there and have a bottomless pit that you can just click to video to video to video to video. So I would say we're defining it for them as the internet streaming pornography. Yeah,
Okay.
if a guy's got a
Okay.
major
That's very significant.
if a guy's got a major problem in his life where he's watching, and we'll walk guys through the process of, is social media feeding your addiction? Some of our clients have to delete all their social media accounts for a short period of time because they're scrolling for an hour on fitness IG pages or whatever, which is basically just softcore pornography. But if that is the gateway to you then spending an hour on pornography. Now, if you can just use Instagram socially, like I have Instagram for my business, like I'm not following any of these pages anymore. It was a problem for me, but so we define it as internet streaming pornography for them. And then through our coaching, we'll identify, okay, do you need to stop watching, certain types of shows, or you need to delete social media? So at that point, we get more one-on-one specific with the individual.
I would love to interview you about this. You might be the only expert that I know.
Okay.
And and I like that you're not really a 12-step person. I would love to interview you about this from our audience because men ask me all the time, and I have a couple of ideas. I've worked with a couple of people successfully about it, but it's really not my specialty. So it would be very interesting for me to interview you
Yeah,
about this
no,
if you're open to it.
yeah, love that. We'll link up
We'll set it
after the
up.
call here,
Okay.
here today. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I've walked the walk, and we're having tremendous success in the work
You,
that we're
you talk
doing.
more
So
openly about it than anybody that I know, and you're easy to talk to. You seem to know what you're doing, and it seems like you've had a bunch of clients. So
yeah, we've
I'd love
had
to talk about
a lot of success. Absolutely, Glenn. So yeah, so we're gonna get everybody to check out Never Binge Alone. Click the big red button. So final question here, Glenn. It's gonna kind of pivot from the topic of conversation, and this is something we ask every single guest. So obviously, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life, and how we got here is it has been a result of really my own life's journey. So I struggled with, obviously very transparent in this conversation, I had some issues with pornography, and I also had some other issues, drugs, alcohol, sex, just kind of that whole gamut. Like first
it. Feel
20,
good stuff.
yeah, so I struggled with addiction for a massive amount of my time, and really beginning this process and journey back in late 2018. What's got us here has been an element of my faith and kind of my worldview. But when I talk about a superhuman life, it's more of a belief system, or kind of the way that I try to live my life. So I believe we're all put on this earth for a very specific purpose. So there's something that we're called to do. So we have this assignment, we have this calling on our life. We're then given this body, we're given this vessel and a series of tools to make that purpose kind of come to life. So we're taking our role in it. We just don't show up in the purpose is going to fulfill itself. We play a role in making that happen. So when I talk about living a super life, it's being aligned with your purpose and then doing everything within your power to fully bring it and manifest and bring it to the world and in service of others. So I'd like to get the guest take here, Glenn. So as we bring it home here, Dr. Livingston, how would you define living a superhuman life?
When people worry about finding their purpose, I actually had the privilege of trading consultations with Stephen Covey, who worked on helping people to find their purpose. And he would say, let your purpose find you. And I would add to that you have to put down the addiction to let your purpose find you. When people put down their addictions, when they stop with the pornography and the hyperpalatable foods and the drugs and the alcohol, or they dramatically reduce it, at first there's a boredom that sets in because you're used to being hyperstimulated. And it's like, is life this calm? This is boring? Is life this calm? But what happens if you don't pick up another addiction and you don't seek the super stimulation again is that your libido shift, your life energy shifts to the things that you're on this world to do. So for me, that happened to be, teaching and speaking and trying to spread the word of what really works like this. But for some people, it's being a great parent. For others, it's being an artist. For some people, it's writing a book. For some people, it's participating in their church or building an organization or doing something. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. It has to happen because you have all this life energy that was wasted seeking and chasing the dragon, seeking more and more stimulation all the time. All this life energy was wasted. When you stop wasting that energy, it's going to go someplace. And over the course of a year or two, that boredom really lifts and life becomes splendid and wonderful and purpose filled. And you wonder how you ever lived in another world. That's what I would say.
Absolutely love that. And the clients here at Rebuild Recovery, and I've talked about that moment in time, for me, when literally it's like I woke up one day and it's like this grayish lens that I've been looking at the world through was almost lifted. And I say I began to see the world differently. sun sights became more beautiful. Just the classic nature scenery. Fruit became more vibrant. Colors outside became more vibrant, and that's absolutely amazing. So,
start to live in color.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. Well, Dr. Dr. Livingston, I appreciate you so much.
Whatever you want to call me, man.
This has been absolutely amazing.
You, dude, whatever it is.
Yeah, so you guys heard it here. Put your addictions down, stop feeding the inner pig, get control of your life, and begin to live your own superhuman life. If you have not done so yet, you can help us and support the show here in 2 different ways. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button right there and turn those notifications on. We're dropping these episodes every single Monday. And those for you guys on the audio side, if you haven't done so yet and you're getting value out of these conversations, please leave us a rating and review, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, whatever platform you guys are listening to. But jam-packed conversation. Really hope you guys got this. Make sure to check out Never Binge Again. Click the big red button and grab all the free bonuses that he's giving away. But for Glenn, Frank, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.